You're listening to Draft Chaff. Coming up this week.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
It becomes a 3-1 for 5 mana. Our Lost Caverns of Ixalan Draft Chaff Hero is...
Ultimately, this saved the day of the player who was piloting the deck.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Draft Chaff. This is episode 182. My name is Zach. I'm one of your hosts, and joining me, as per usual, Ben Fisher. What's up, dude?
Not too much. I gotta say, around 15 minutes ago, I kind of felt like crap. It was a long day at school. You know, it's about to be an even longer day. We've got a whole recording ahead of us. But then I remembered that I recently discovered this thing called cold brew coffee, which I don't know how I made it this far in life without it. And this stuff is incredible. So I've got my cold brew. I'm pumped. I'm ready. All right.
Yeah, good cold brew is great. I'm a fan. Yeah. So this week we've got one of our favorite episodes. Before we jump into it, though, of course, our usual housekeeping. If you're not already in the Discord, do check that out. It's the best place to be to chat all things MTG. Come say hi to us. We're in there as frequently as we can be. Talk about your trophy decks, your what's the picks, anything like that. Especially now we've got cons, which is a brand new set to most people in the Discord. Happy to jump in there and have discussions around the new set. Link to that is in the episode description as well as on our Twitter page. And if you'd like to support the show directly, you can do so on Patreon at patreon.com/draftchaffpod. Huge thanks to each and every one of our patrons who continue to support us. We love you guys. You keep us doing this and make it so that we can continue to put out awesome content for you. We do have some artist proofs or some images of the pins that we are sending out to everybody who backed us during the new relaunch period. So keep an eye out on your email for a notification from Patreon to see what those look like. We have actual real photographs of the pins, and we'll have more details on when you should expect those in the mail soon. They are on the way to us. Once we have them, we can give you a better estimate on when you'll get them.
And they look great. I'm very excited to have mine.
Yeah, they're pretty sweet. We also have lots of other cool perks over there. If you missed the relaunch window, we have things like our custom Draft Chaff Hero stickers. More on that later.
Yeah.
Of course, our Draft Chaff Cube drafts and actually getting the ability to have a say in what the official Draft Chaff Cube has in it or what gets removed. We're working towards completely boosting the funding for the rewards and the bounty boards. So potentially getting up to even having first place getting a box instead of just a few packs here and there. And all sorts of things like that. Those are kind of the things that you're helping fund if you are backing us through the Patreon. So check that out at patreon.com/draftchaffpod. Wanted to do a quick plug as well. It is December, so we are gearing up for our holiday mailbag episode. And if you do submit questions, 3 entrants who submit questions in our listener questions channel in the Discord will win 3 arena codes each. So it's 9 total codes going to 3 people. Not going to repeat any winners there, but drop your questions in there if you haven't already. We will love to answer those on the holiday mailbag episode. All right, on to our crack and draft type thing. As I mentioned, Cons is out. So Ben, it looks like we have a pack one pick one here from Cons of Tarkir.
That we do. We've got a pack one pick one here. And I'll be honest, I'm not an expert in Cons, at least not yet. I'd like to be by the time it's off of Arena, at least like the regular draft queues. So I'm going to this kind of blind. Very curious to hear feedback about what people think of our card analysis, given that many of you listeners probably know a lot more about the format than we do. First up is Awaken the Bear. 2 and a green, instant target creature gets 3/3 and trample till end of turn. Pretty beefy trick, and this is a pretty beefy format. A lot of big things, a lot of things that take a while to set up, and the tendency for boards to stall. I could see this as a way to punch through, but obviously, a 3-mana pump spell, it's a little risky. I don't love this.
Yeah, it is a relatively slow format. It's much slower than we're used to. But yeah, this 3 mana for a trick like this is not where I want to be.
We've got Arrow Storm up next. 3 red. It's a sorcery. It deals 4 to a creature or player. Or if you have Raid, where if you've attacked this turn, deals 5 to that creature or player and can't be prevented. I mean, this is a Lava Axe and a kill spell. It's kind of really flexible like that. I did die to this in my first draft of the format. I like this one. It's kind of what a beefy, slow red deck wants.
Yeah, and we've gotten used to seeing these like 5 mana deal a bunch of damage commons in red. We almost always get one of these. I feel like we haven't explicitly talked about them lately, but we're pretty used to seeing these. And that extra clause about doing a little bit of extra damage and then, also not being preventable is pretty solid. I definitely would want to take Aerostorm over Awaken the Bear. Still not an exciting first pick, though.
Yeah. I guess they don't really make a lot of strict lava axes anymore, right? Just straight up 5 mana, deal 5 to an opponent. It's usually just like the 5 mana, deal 5 to a creature, deal 2 to an opponent as an additional bonus somehow. We've got a Kill Shot. It's an instant. It's cost 2 and a white. Destroy target attacking creature. Useful. Seems like a fine rate. Just destroys, so it goes to the graveyard, and that can fuel Delve, or Sultai is all about getting stuff back. So it's risky, but seems like a good rate.
Yep, still not exciting.
Yeah. Inoc Tracker, that's 5 in red, 3/3 first strike, and it has Morph for 4 in red. So Morph cards I'm a big fan of. This is a pretty weird mechanic. You can play a card face down, and at any time you can flip it up for its Morph cost. You know what I always wondered? What if you just played like a land face down?
So that would be Manifest, which isn't in this set, but you can do that with Manifest cards. But
could you cheat and just play a land face down in paper, and then how would someone call you out on it?
So you have to reveal in high rel tournaments, when this was like a format that tournaments were being played for, Pro Tour, all the GPs, all those kinds of things. If you played a Morph card, no matter at any point, you had to reveal it. So even when the game ended, you had to reveal that it was a proper Morph.
Oh, okay. So it would become known information after you played it if the game ended, if it died or something. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So if let's say the game ended with a Morph on the board, but the Morph itself hadn't died, you can't just shuffle that away into your deck and not reveal to your opponent that it was a Morph card.
Interesting. In any case, the rate on this seems fine. I mean, it's a 3/3 first strike, and this is a slower format, so that could get beefy, especially with big pump spells or wearing counters, but seems fine. Morphs, they do tend to play better than you think. Seems okay, but I don't know if it'd be better than something like Kill Shot. Seems like red wants to be a little faster, a little lower to the ground.
These, you can almost think of Morph as cards with cycling, because they do that curve filling thing where you can, at 3, you can always play them, and you can quote unquote splash them that way too, because the 3 mana is generic, so you can just always play these on 3 no matter what colors you're playing. And then you have the option to then cast another card, quote unquote, by activating the Morph ability to flip it into whatever creature it actually is. Some Morph cards are much better than others. They do all tend to play better than you probably think they would. That said, a 3 mana 2/2 is not really anything to be super excited about. And a 5 mana 3/3 first strike, also not really something to be excited about. And so for me, Inoc Tracker is not a card that I'm excited about. But if you need the curve filling considerations, you want an expensive card, because you can also just never morph this and cast it for 6, but then it's a 6 mana 3/3 first strike, which is just awful.
Yeah, it's
that's just terrible.
It's funny having to adjust our heads. What was this, 2015, almost 10 years ago?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah, 10 years ago. I mean, this is just what a common looked like. This would get annihilated in a format like LCI, for example.
Yeah.
Next up is Firehoof Cavalry. It's a white for a 1/1 common, and you can pay 3 in a red to give it 2/0 and trample till end of turn. It's a human berserker, not a human warrior. And to my understanding, white, it would want the warrior over the berserker just about every time, right?
Yes, and this is also still just not a card you're generally very excited about. It's a 1 mana 1/1, sure, it fills the curve there, but then you've got to pump 3 mana into this and give it +2/+0 and trample.
4 mana.
4 mana, yeah. I'm sorry, I misread that. That's terrible.
Yeah.
It becomes a 3/1 for 5 mana. No, I don't need that. It's not trampling over much in this format. You can do it multiple times, I guess, but and at instant speed. But
yeah,
this isn't blocking. This creature doesn't want to be blocking. So
next up, we've got Bloodfire Mentor. 2 in a red. It is a weird 0/5. There's a lot of cards in this set I've noticed with like really high toughness, really low power. It has 2 and a blue tap, draw a card, then discard a card. So bit of a weird looter, a looting wall. Mm-hmm. I mean, this just looks like utter garbage.
It does look that way. I think there are some pretty defensive control Jeskai decks you can build that would want this card. I still don't think you would ever want to first pick it, but I mean, this is just a big blocker that at instant speed on your opponent's turn you can dump some mana into to filter your hand out and get away from flooding or whatever. Like control decks like having that option.
The red deck, I guess.
Yeah, but it's Jeskai. It's not red.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't imagine ever being excited about putting this card in my deck, but
it's probably not good.
It was a different time back then.
It's probably not good. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I could see some control vectors in the Jeskai colors that would want a card like this.
I guess they would also want our next card, Monastery Flock, 2 and a blue for a 0/5 defender flying, and it has morph for a blue. What is with these 0/5s?
Hey, I loved it. They were setting up because Dragons of Tarkir is when Assault Formation came out, so they were gearing up for the Assault Formation deck in Standard. I love it.
All right. That I can't get mad about, but this again, I just can't imagine wanting to put into a deck. Like this just looks like junk. Then again, I am a bit more of an assertive player at heart. I prefer to be the one forcing the issue rather than the one reacting to the issue. So I see a 0/5 and I just go next. And next is actually pretty great. It's Feat of Resistance. This is one of the white. You put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, and it gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. This card has always been a banger. What was this one reprinted in? Like M21 or something? It was one of the best commons in that draft format. And it's going to be one of the best commons in this draft format too. It's such a great rate. And to be honest, this one would hold up in modern day sets, whereas a lot of these other ones are just really overcosted and slow. So that tells you that even within the scale of this format, it's going to be really efficient. Now, this next one, I have a pretty soft spot in my heart for. We got Highland Game. 1 of the green for a 2/1 elk. Nice. And when it dies, you gain 2 life. This has got to be garbage, right?
I would think so. I mean, 2 mana, 2/1, gain 2 when it dies, fine. But I feel like there are just better things to do in the format. Again, I'm operating on very limited information here, so I really don't know how the format plays out yet. So I'm not too sure.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is garbage. I mean, look at these other 3 mana, like Monastery Flock basically negates this card entirely. Mm-hmm. And I think Monastery Flock is a card that's easily negated by other cards. So like, where does that leave Highland Game? It doesn't beat the things that don't beat the good cards.
Yeah. I mean, next to Feat of Resistance, you just kind of laugh, but
yeah, Feat is by far the pick here for me. Arrow Storm, I am looking at too, but I like Feat a little more. Seems like a more efficient rate. And it's just a cheaper card, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last common here is Dutiful Return. That's the 3 and a black sorcery. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. I had this one in the single draft that I've done of this format so far. It was very good. You just trade a bunch of stuff off, get it back in the late game. Works.
Yeah, I feel like this type of card is one that we've gotten used to lately being not incredible. Like you maybe want one of these in your like green-black Graveyard Matters decks, but we don't see these played very often. This is supposedly a format that is slow enough that card actually is quite good, and there's a lot of graveyard stuff going on. It doesn't pair super well with Delve, because if you're delving away your creatures, then you don't have anything to return. So keep that in mind if you're building Delve decks, but Dutiful Return is supposed to be quite good in this form.
Funny enough, it does pair well with the things that pair well with Delve, right? Like self-mill enablers or stuff that dumps cards in the graveyard. Looting effects, I guess, even like the Bloodfire Mentor. Not that those I think would ever release the same deck. And at 4 mana and sorcery speed, this looks like the worst version of this effect we've seen in years. Then again, it's a much slower format than usual. you can even play like a higher land count because of these like morph cards, because you're guaranteed 3 drops and 5 or 6-ish drops if you take the ones with big morph effects. So you can pretty reliably hit you want to pretty reliably hit your like 5th, 6th, 7th land drop in some cases. So then Dutiful Return doesn't look that bad when scaled with the game in that way. I don't know. Out of the commons, I'm on the Feet of Resistance here.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, uncommons. We've got Death Frenzy up first. That's 3 green, black sorcery. All creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. And whenever a creature you control, or whenever a creature dies this turn, rather, you gain 1 life.
Yeah, so it's basically
that card's good.
Yeah, it's a big board wipe that gains you life when you're killing stuff. -2/-2 is interesting because you're looking at like some of the stuff we see in this pack, right? 05s. A lot of like there's a 3/3 in the pack, right? We have like there are some creatures with quite high toughness in the format. There's also, we'll see later, like some 4/4s and a 3/4. -2/-2 is not really going to kill much, but if you use it after attacks where your opponent thinks they're setting up profitable blocks, then you can kind of sneak away with some pretty solid removal. And it basically becomes a board wipe. So this is a card that's not like a traditional board wipe. You do have to do some work, I feel, to make it, to like maximize it in this format. But on the bright side, you gain some life off of it. So you're getting a little bit extra than just wiping the board from this one if you can set up the right environment to do so.
Yeah, this feels good to stabilize against these maybe more assertive black and white, like warrior type beatdown decks. I will say I had 3 morphs on the field. My opponent had a 3/3.
Does destroy morphs, yeah.
I just scooped. I mean, how do you win? What are you supposed to do? Like, my opponent said, okay, how about a 3-for-1 and I gain a bunch of life and I, casual Plague Wind with strict upside. I mean, I guess they were taking a risk by playing it in best of 1. But it certainly worked out against me.
Yeah, there are a lot of morphs in the set. You can almost guarantee you'll see them in probably every deck. Like, they're just all over the place. It might not be enough to warrant playing this card in a best of 1 scenario, but they are all over the place. You do also have the opportunity to morph your card in response, don't you?
Yeah, you could unmorph in response.
So there's that too, but most morph effects are quite expensive, and so you may be able to morph 1 creature, save 1 creature.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Armament Core, 2 Abzan, so 2 white, black, green for a 4/4 human soldier. When it enters the battlefield, distribute 2 1/1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures you control. Stat piece, I guess.
Yep.
Seems pretty good.
5 mana 4/4 that puts another 2/2 worth of stats out. Pretty solid.
A little hard to cast. I guess you want the Abzan deck specifically for this. And Abzan does have some sort of like a vector that cares about counters being on creatures, right? There's that cycle of like Murek Nightblade is like a 4 mana 3/3, and it says creatures you control with 1/1 counters on them have death touch. Abzan Falconer is the same thing, but with flying, and there's a trample one and other stuff like that, and other bonuses here and there for having counters on your creatures. So this seems good, especially if you have ways that your deck already cares about having counters on stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Last uncommon here is Sultai Flare. 3 and a green for a 3/4 Naga Shaman at uncommon. Whenever a creature you control with toughness 4 or greater dies, you gain 4 life. So when this thing dies, you gain 4 life. And then anything else that has 4 power when it dies, you gain 4. I don't know. This seems a little narrow, sort of just like a value card. I mean, how important is life gain in this format? Wouldn't you rather be accruing card advantage via something like Dutiful Return or board advantage with Armament Core?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the time these cards feel enticing because you're like, ooh, yeah, I'm getting something out of my thing dying. But there are also like a handful of cards in this format that are like, I don't know, 3 or 4 mana, gain 10 or whatever, and that's all they do. And those are just bad cards. Like, you just never want to play them. Even though it sounds like, wow, 10 is a lot of life, they're just not worth the card slot, and they're often just more mana than they're worth. Like, even a 1 mana gain 10 is often not worth putting in your deck.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel quite like that. I mean, it is still a 3/4 for 4, which is good, and it's going to give you benefits whenever a toughness 4 or greater creature dies. But you need to be big. You need to be big, building big butts here, right? Like you need a bunch of 4+ toughness creatures. So it's kind of a build around like C, maybe C-. I don't know.
Finally, something to combo with my Monastery Flock and Bloodline Mentor, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I mean, I think that, again, there are a bunch of creatures in the format that have toughness 4 or more, but do you need to be building your deck such that like you're manipulating the cards you put in it just to make this card better? Probably not. It's one of those like playing bad cards to make bad cards better scenarios you just don't want to be in. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, this seeing cards like this makes me want to try best of 3, because this could be a beating against like a beatdown deck that's trying to just reduce your life total as fast as possible. But against some sort of value-y mirror, which I played a bunch of in my first draft, this doesn't seem super effective.
Right. I also will throw out there's a good chance that we're just entirely wrong about any of these evaluations, because we haven't played the format really, and it's been a long time since this one was designed, and I think we're pretty confident in saying that set design has changed since then. So we are used to very different formats.
Although it is interesting to think in terms of vectors for some of these, like Highland Game. What is this thing's vector? It wants to die, to be sacrificed, to have little life gain synergies. And to my knowledge, there's nothing else in the format that cares about that. So to me, that tells me that Highland Game is trash. Except in my Elk Commander deck, where it's actually great. Because it's a 2-drop Elk, and there's only so many of those. Anyway, I think we should mention our rare. It's a Polluted Delta. A nice, beautiful blue-black fetch land. And if I were drafting the set in paper...
Oh, Windmill Slam the Delta, go cash out and be happy with your life. I think even still... I might just want the Delta here because it keeps you open. It lets you fetch out some of the like random. I guess none of the duels in this set have basic land types.
They don't have types.
But it still helps with fixing. It keeps you open. I'd probably just take the Delta here. I mean, maybe what else are you taking? Like Feed of Resistance? Do you take any of the uncommons over Feed of Resistance?
I personally, at this point, would not. I think it might be between Feed of Resistance and Arrow Storm and the Delta. I mean, fetch lands, sometimes you open a rare land and you go like, oh shoot, nothing to it. But this is genuinely really good fixing. Like if you wind up in some sort of Sultai combination, then I mean, just having a fetch isn't bad. Plus, it does go to the graveyard. It does help with Delve just a little bit. I don't know. I might not take it first pick, but this doesn't seem like a super outstanding pack. I think I'd go with the Feet of Resistance, then Storm, then Delta in that order.
All right. All right, on to our main topic. This week, we're revealing our LCI, Lost Caverns of Ixalan Draft Chaff Hero. And this was a fun one for us to pick because, well, we'll get into that. But without further ado, our Lost Caverns of Ixalan Draft Chaff Hero is... It's Kinth.
It's Kinth. It's Kinth.
We have to say it 5 times.
It's Kinth. Ooh, yikes. Well, it's not second Kinth and it's not third Kinth. It is. Wait, it's not fourth Kinth.
Oh God.
Kinth. It's all right. So it's Kinth. Honestly, this one kind of called out to us, right? Even in the live draft where we got 3 of them in pack 3 or some ridiculous nonsense like that. It's Kinth was calling our name on this one.
Yeah.
It's Kinth, firstborn of Gishath, and this is a fun little card. I mean, it's red-green for a 2/3 legendary creature dinosaur. How often do you get a legendary 2-mana signpost uncommon that happens to be something as fun as a dinosaur? It's got haste, so 2-mana 2/3 haste, already a solid body. But then it's ETB. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay 2. When you do, target dinosaur you control deals damage equal to its power to another target creature. I mean, this is usually itself. You play this on turn 4. You pay the 2. Careful when you have a, what is it? The Lore Keeper in play. You got to pay for its Kinth with the Lore Keeper because the Lore Keeper can't pay for this ability. It can only cast dinosaur spells, not for abilities. I've had that come up a bunch of times. Anyway, this is usually going to be a 4-mana ETB deal 2 to something because it sees its own power, right? But sometimes you have a 6/6 dino in play, or a 5/3 dino in play, or a 5/4, and this ends up being just deal 4, 5, 7 to a creature your opponent controls, and all that on a card that's also a 2-mana 2/3 haste. This little guy screams Draft Chaff Hero. I mean, it's a legendary baby dinosaur. If this doesn't embody our brand of Draft Chaff Hero, I really don't know what does.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify for the listener, the lore keepers do let you pay for abilities activated by dinosaurs, but they have to be activated from, not triggered by.
Oh, that's it.
That's the issue here. But yeah, I mean, it's a solid little body. I mean, we're up on stats. It's got haste if that matters on turn 2, which against some of these red-green decks it does. And then you just turn all of your dinosaurs or your biggest dinosaur into a removal spell as well if you're playing this late. So it's good early, good late. Just fantastic overall. And it put up good numbers. We'll get to the numbers in a bit. We don't always use the 17 lands data as the end all be all for what a Draft Chaff Hero should be. But this one did put up good numbers, and so it was feasible to discuss there, and we'll talk about some of our runner-ups later. But because we've done the Patreon relaunch, and we have this new tier for, instead of sending out Draft Chaff Hero cards, what we used to do, if you're newer to the show, we would send out to certain Patreon tiers our Draft Chaff Hero signed by Ben and I. We've changed that. So instead of sending out the cards, we have an artist designing custom stickers for each of our Draft Chaff Heroes, which is just phenomenal. And we have a reveal for our first one ever. And this is what it looks like. It's like, come on.
This is incredible. My jaw was on the ground when I first saw this. I was cracking up. Listener, pause, pull up Spotify, pull up YouTube. Just come look at this. It is so stinking cute, right? Like, look at the little mohawk he's got going on there, the pacifier, the so beautiful good egg. I mean, this is just perfect. I literally could not have done anything close to this or thought of anything better myself. Julia, our in-house artist, really crushed it, and you can expect plenty more great work where this came from, because every time we have a Draft Chaff Hero from now on, a new sticker will get sent out to all patrons of the sticker tier. So if you want this sticker, want to slap it on your deck box, or this one's going on my PC and my deck box probably, I'm hoping that eventually my limited kit will just be covered in Draft Chaff Hero stickers. Like, it's going to look so good. And when people see Ixalan with the little pacifier and everything, man, it's perfect. Again, head over to Patreon if you want one of these things, because this is worth it.
Yeah, and I'll just throw out there too, we aren't going to backtrack the Draft Chaff Hero stickers. So in order to get one for a given season, you have to be a Patreon for that season. So when we announce the next Draft Chaff Hero, you won't be able to get the Ixalan one anymore. But if you sign up anytime between now and when the next one's announced, you will get it. So do check that out. It's the Inspiring Overseer tier that is eligible for these, but you can find all that on Patreon. Anyway, we're really excited about this. Julia, you did a fantastic job. So, thanks for that. And I guess let's move on to some of the data for Ixalan here.
Yeah, so overall, Ixalan was up near the what you call mythic uncommons in the set. Looking at 17 lands data by game in hand win rate, the 5th best. Behind it, some other bangers, admittedly. Zoetic Glyph is still up there at 63.3% win rate. Followed by Spyglass Siren, Deep Cavern Bat, and Ruin Lurker Bat. And then our little Ixalan right there in 5th with a 60.7% game in hand win rate, which is very respectable. I mean, 60.7, that's relatively, that's up there. Now, in opening hand win rate, surprisingly a little lower than some of these other ones. Something like Zoetic Glyph has a 65% opening hand win rate, whereas Ixalan only has a 59.9% win rate. Maybe because in opening hand, people might be incentivized to play it on turn 2 if they're lacking another 2-drop. And that's obviously not the best use case for Ixalan. The best use case is it comes in on turn 8, you pay the 2, you deal 6 to your opponent's big thing, and you smack for $1 million. So a funny little trend there that all these other ones are up by like 65, 63, 64% for opening hand win rate. But then again, Spyglass Siren, Deep Cavern Bat, Ruin Lurker Bat, these are all 1 and 2 mana flyers. So it does make sense that these would have pretty beefy numbers when in your opening hand.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting. We had considered, and we'll kind of talk about this in our runner-ups, but you'll notice that one of these top cards is not a creature.
Yeah.
And so that would have been interesting. It would have been our first non-creature Draft Chaff Hero, which feels a little weird. Let us know in the Discord if you think we should have non-creature Draft Chaff Heroes in the future, because we went back and forth on it quite a bit, and we were kind of torn about whether a hero could be a non-creature.
Yeah, I can think of some sets where the Draft Chaff Hero would have been non-creature. Revenge of Ravens comes to mind for original Eldraine, because that was by far the most Draft Chaff Hero worthy card from the set. This was, I think, before we did it. Did we have a Draft Chaff Hero from that? I don't think so. Then again, we might have instead gone with something like Sir Conrad the Grim, which was also just about the same effectiveness, maybe a little worse data-wise, but also just a beating of a card. And also a good candidate for Draft Chaff Hero. Anywho, Itzkint was clearing away our pick here because, I mean, just look at that little guy. Just look at this sticker. Tell me this isn't the cutest thing you've seen.
So this is also a pretty easy one to talk about when it comes to vectors. I think most, if not all, of our potential options for Draft Chaff Hero this time around would have had very few vectors. There just wasn't a ton of vector overlap in this set. And so Itzkint pretty much just goes in dinos. Like you're playing him in red-green and that's it.
Yeah, funny enough, this is sort of one of the big signals that red-green is open. It's sort of when you see like a pick 3 or 4 Itzkint, that's when you know, like, oh, I took a good couple red cards, maybe like a Poetic Ingenuity, and then like I don't know, some other good red 2-drop, another good red removal spell like in a Braid, and then an Itzkint. Oh, well, if the dinosaurs deck is open, if you're the only one drafting this vector, then you wind up with just all the goods, right? You wind up with like the 3 mana 3/3 that gains 3 life. If you can get those like 8th, 9th pick, you're living, right? That's a great way to combat the pretty hyper aggressive artifact beatdown vectors like red, white, and blue, white in the set. And plus, sometimes you just get like the equivalent of a Llanowar elf like wheeling. That's really strong. So this is, again, usually about one person exactly per table should be in dinosaurs. And if you're the one, you'll get your Itzkints. Don't worry. Nobody else will want them.
For sure. Now, this does have a little bit of a home in a second deck, and that's 5-color. There are 5-color decks floating around the format that perform decently well, and Itzkint generally ends up in that because you do see kind of a green base in 5-color decks. And there are a lot of good green dinos. So you kind of get a little bit of an overlap in vectors there as well.
Now, there were some runner-ups that we had. Spyglass Siren, Captain Storm, Cosmian Raider. These two belong to that hyper-aggressive blue artifact beatdown vector, as does our previously mentioned Zoetic Glyph, the one that maybe would have been our other choice had we not gone with Itzkint. We were really between Glyph, Itzkint, and one of the two above. Glyph would have been an interesting one. Again, the first time a non-creature spell was up for contention here. We did err on the side of Itzkint just because, again, look at him. look at that little dude. More Draft Chaff Hero vibes, more Draft Chaff energy, I'd say. Whereas Glyph is it's an evocative card, a bit flavorful, but not quite as Draft Chaffy, I'd say. Just still a cool design, one of these sort of in-soul artifact type cards with Discover for pretty much guaranteed value. You can't even kill this thing without just losing because your opponent gets to basically get their value back no matter what. And another consideration here would have been Chupacabra Echo, the 4-mana 3/2 beast horror spirit that ETBs to kill something, or -X/-X, where X is your fathomless descent count, the number of permanents in your graveyard. This sort of single-handedly makes these black descend decks viable. Really, a copy or two of this and then a bunch of ways to recur it from the graveyard is all you really need to make one of these Fathomless Descent decks actually be able to stand up against these red-white beatdown decks. Chupacabra Echo is a big part of that.
All right. Well, I mean, that's kind of it in terms of discourse for our Draft Chaff Hero. Would love to hear if you guys thought we were going for something else, or if, again, if you think that Zoetic Glyph or some other future non-creature card could make it as a Draft Chaff Hero. Let us know in the Discord. But as we like to do with the Draft Chaff Hero episodes, we do have a bunch of miscellaneous kind of topics we wanted to cover. So Ben, why don't we? This one's kind of more personal to you, so why don't we cover this first one here?
Oh yeah, anyone who was on Magic Internet this week no doubt saw Spillgate, which I don't even. I don't know if it's going to stick, but I certainly think it's a funny enough name. So I was actually at an RCQ this weekend, and after round one, I noticed a big crowd of people surrounding two players that seem to have gotten an extension of some kind. So I walk over and I noticed that one of the players seems to be playing a deck consisting entirely of islands with Sharpie scribbled on them. And I look at my round one opponent who's also done and watching, and I'm like, what is happening here? Did something happen to this person's deck that, fall off into the subway and get carried off by a rat or something? Like, why is this person using a deck of all proxies? I find out much later on that apparently coffee had been spilled on this player's deck, ruining it during round one and making it totally unusable. And that's obviously a bummer. You show up to an RCQ with your beautiful burn deck, foiled out, cool expedition fetches, everything. And then your opponent spills coffee on it. I mean, it was double sleeved, but it looked like, from what sources reported, the double sleeving was not perfect. Maybe it was something where like the double sleeves faced the same way as the outer sleeves, so liquid could still get in. And it ruined the cards. And so what do you do in that case? Do you just get sent home by the judge and say, well, your deck's no longer viable? But then like your deck is kind of ruined. Like the cards are a floppy, wet mess. Like what shout out to our head judge, Judge Jen, or Jenny, I think that they went by, because they made a really fun judgment call in the moment. And they decided to create 58 judge proxies. So official judge approved proxies, signing off on the fact that all of them were viable. Every card in the deck but 2 mountains was ruined, funnily enough. So they had a deck for the tournament of 2 mountains and 58 other cards, all of which had like Lightning Bolt written on an island, Lava Spike written on an island, Boros Charm written on an island. And then their sideboard was unharmed, which made for this fascinating tale. This player ended up doing pretty well, made top 3, I think. So just barely missed the cutoff for the invite. So, great for them. And the player that spilled the coffee was very cool about it too. Bought the deck off of the opponent and also replaced all the cards. So, class act there. Anyway, this caused a bit of discourse on Magic Twitter about whether this was a viable judge call and about whether the juice was worth the squeeze on this one, because it was burn. And, without wading into what people say about burn decks, they're easy to pilot. I wouldn't agree with that, but are they less complex to pilot than something like Yawgmoth Hospital? Yeah, they're certainly less difficult to represent with proxies. So I actually walked over and watched, and I was able to pretty easily tell what was going on, because it's a burn deck, right? There's like 3 permanents in play at any given time, and then just a bunch of spells going on the stack. And the spells basically all do the same thing. It's like a deal 3, exile the top 2, Goblin Guide, Monastery Swiftspear. People know what these cards do. So it wasn't actually that hard to track. So there were some pros weighing in and saying that this judge call was inappropriate because this could have created board states that were inhospitable to newer players or newer opponents. I would disagree and say that within the context of this tournament, this was actually a brilliant judge call. Because would this have worked for Yawgmoth if this was Yawgmoth deck, or some off-meta deck that no one knew the cards in, or even something like a Living End deck where there's just a lot of text that maybe not everyone knows off the bat? This might not have worked. They might have needed a different resolution. But for burn, I think this is actually perfect. Like the judge was also on hand at all times to basically watch over this person's match. I saw they were going overtime, and basically instead of having free time kind of wandering around observing, they're basically just like helping with this player's matches the entire tournament, answering any questions about what a certain card might have read. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? Was this the right judge call?
Hard to say, given I wasn't there. I think given the context I know about what happened, I think it was a fine call. Whether it was the right call, maybe there were multiple correct, quote unquote, correct calls to make here. But like, what are your other options? The player who had someone else spill stuff on their deck gets DQ'd?
Yeah, like that's no fun.
I don't think. And then what is like every LGS supposed to have a copy of every modern playable deck on hand to let people play with if something like this happens? Would they have done this if it was a pro tour? I don't know. But I think context matters a lot. And I think too many people saw this and thought like this call is going to set precedents for every call going forward. And I don't think this was high enough level for that to be the case. And that's what judges are kind of there for, is to make a call in the moment and decide what's reasonable to do going forward. And I think, again, given the context of this event, that seemed to be a reasonable thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, this call, it saved the tournament for two players, right? And maybe others, opponents that might have had to deal with a different, less correct call. Ultimately, this saved the day of the player who was piloting the deck. They came in third or fourth. I don't remember which. I think third. So that's really cool. This saved the day of the opponent who spilled the coffee, because I don't even know how they were feeling about this. I do actually. It turns out the person who spilled the coffee is a good longtime pal of mine, who I've known even back since Rutgers Magic tournaments. And real stand-up guy, real cool dude. It wasn't surprising at all that he bought the deck off the opponent and replaced all the cards with most of the stuff from his personal collection. Just immediately. So funny enough, I didn't actually know this until after, but I offered to get him a drink partway through the tournament. And I didn't know he was the one that had spilled this. I didn't even know that the spill had occurred until the very end of the day. So what I will say is that maybe around 3 or 4 of the tournament, the entire tournament hall did see me hand the spiller a second cup of coffee. So I don't know what that made me. Maybe complicit in future spills. But in any case, there was no harm, no foul between the two players. I guess maybe the ultimate takeaway is drinks belong on the ground or something like that. I will certainly be more conscious of where I put my drinks in all future matches. So this was a very funny occurrence, and honestly, it was pretty fun just to be there for it. Some more discourse that happened this week. There was Eternal Weekend that happened this past weekend. So big, like legacy, vintage tournament, big money cards, lotuses flying around, all sorts of stuff. And this spawned a bit of chatter on Twitter in regards to a picture that was taken at a dinner where a bunch of people from a certain tournament like all went out to dinner afterwards, and someone was there wearing a Make America Great Again hat. But the person who posted the picture had blurred out the words Make America Great Again. So this led to the idea that apparently it was cool to hang out with this person, but not cool to show it, even though it's pretty obvious. And this person, even in context, is known to wear this hat. And actually, once again, I find myself in the spotlight. I have played against this certain opponent at my local game store while he was wearing this hat. And to be honest, what it came off to me was knowing, the large subset of people that play Magic. There's an awfully large subset of people that get pretty upset about something like this. And from, what was going
Magic
around
players
online,
get upset about?
yeah, that's true. From the context, it seemed like this was an intentional choice to try to trigger your opponent and just tilt them a little bit, get that little bit of extra EV, and also just to, tilt the, I guess, socially conscious leftist Magic players that happen to be there. And I'll be honest, I was thrown when I saw this. I was like, is this cool? Like, are we letting this happen in game stores? Like, there are trans players in this tournament. There are like Hispanic players in this tournament. And here in the US, it's pretty obvious what a hat like that stands for. So it was a bit of a mess. And this led to a whole mess on Twitter about whether people like this should be included in Magic events, or whether this is or whether a local game store can police the clothing of its we're a mess of a Twitter nonsense. So I don't know. I think if ultimately, if your goal is to upset people in such bad faith context like that, stop listening to our podcast and go do something else, because you're not welcome here. If you're trying to intentionally trigger your opponent, that's just like, come on, go get a life. That's not why we play Magic, right? Magic is about connecting with people, being inclusive, and trying to have the most possible people have the best experience possible. And I think Magic is the best possible space. Ironically, there's this what is it? The paradox of inclusion, where in order to have some people feel included, you do need to exclude the people that try to exclude certain historically oppressed subsets and groups. So does this violate the principles of inclusion? Maybe, depend on how you look at it. But ultimately, the goal is to make this a more inclusive place for people that are historically marginalized. And that didn't happen here.
Interesting. It's not where I thought this conversation was going. I thought it was going to have more to do with whether it was okay to blur the thing out, but
that's a whole other thing. Whether don't worry, there's plenty of threads on Twitter about that too. Whether it was okay to hang out with someone, but blur out a piece of their clothing because you know how it would come across, but not blur it fully, and everyone kind of knows about the hat anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot to unpack here. Probably more than we have time for in this episode.
Yeah, this could be an episode unto itself.
Yeah, I don't know. I think inclusivity can be kind of difficult because, by nature, you're like at some point kind of discussing being exclusive in the name of being inclusive, which just feels hypocritical. But then also, is it? And so there's there's some of that. I think the whole like wearing a hat to intentionally trigger people or like tilt people is kind of like a quintessential genius or grifter kind of topic. Leaning definitely in the grifter camp from my perspective for that. But, I personally just don't. That type of stuff just doesn't trigger. Like I just don't care. You can wear what you want, and I'm just gonna play my game. But I can understand how it would make people offended and or it would offend people and there's like I guess a question around should that be okay and should it not? I don't know. Yeah, not a lot of correct answers here. I don't know what like a local game store is supposed to do about something like this. And if someone in like your play group is doing something like this, then like someone who just comes to your local game store frequently, is that a conversation you sit down and have with that person? I'm curious to hear what people think about this in Discord. And should you want to, engage with this topic, be conscious, be polite, and know that, we'll kick you out if you're being rude about this. So anyway, this isn't the end of the discourse. There's plenty more. There was a wave of Hasbro layoffs, which has been going around. And funny enough, the Hasbro layoffs seem to hit a lot of high-profile Magic people. Paul Cheon included, posting on Twitter saying that he is no longer working with Hasbro. And this is funny, given that Wizards is making Hasbro massive swaths of its annual earnings relative to its other, Hasbro subsidiaries, and especially the fact that the people in charge are raking in the billions. So I don't know. This is especially rough right before the holidays, where a bunch of people that have poured a lot of love and heart into Magic are now finding themselves out of a job. Whereas, I don't know, there's better ways this can be done. It just feels so disingenuous and hypocritical to say that Hasbro has been making record earnings thanks to Magic, and then laying off some of the people that have been helping create those record earnings while the folks in charge are raking in more than ever. Yeah, also a really weird time for a toy company to lay people off. They're about to go into like the highest sale time period of the year. Seems like a weird time. Like I would expect if sales didn't match expectations coming out of Christmas and like the holiday season, okay, maybe you lay people off and that you use the data that came in from that typically high sale period to inform those layoffs, but to do it right before that time seems very strange.
All right, how about another dose of discourse for you? There was a judge call going around about the Amalia loop, which is right now a pretty hot Pioneer deck. The Amalia Wild Growth Walker combo, which is technically an infinite combo that mills out yourself and opponents. And you know what? Forget this one. I don't even want to talk about this one. Go look it up on Twitter. This one's just a mess. Another thing that happened this week, Ravnica Remastered stuff has been dropping. They kind of spoiled it all in 2 days. Bit disappointing, to be honest. Not a lot of value. Some cool cards, some really fun and flavorful cards. But this one is being premium priced. And unless you open exactly Cyclonic Rift, you're not really earning back what you get from a pack. One thing that maybe is going to balance that out is that there's a bunch of anime arts. I guess technically manga arts. I don't know. I see people referring to them as anime arts. I guess technically this is manga arts. I don't know. Which, I'll be honest, we've been a little brutal towards in the past. Didn't love it for the Wilds of Eldraine set. Didn't love it the previous iteration. Honestly, don't love it this time around either. A lot of them are kind of generic and not really evocative. And, you know, more power to you if this is your stuff, if you're a huge fan of this art style. There are some of these manga art styles that I absolutely adore. For example, the Junji Ito series, which is just awesome. That is evocative. It clearly has a lot of heart put into it. What I don't love seeing is, I don't know, Aurelia looking more like one of my waifu schoolgirls than like a Boros battle angel. I don't know. There's certainly a market for these art styles, but I guess it's not me.
All right. This week, as we're going to do all month, we are skipping the listener question of the week to store those up for the holiday mailbag. So again, do jump into the Discord and check out our 2023 holiday mailbag channel to drop your questions and get yourself entered into a raffle to pick up those arena codes. With that, we'll move right on to our Teferi Tybalt. This is our Roses and Thorns stylist segment where Ben and I share a high and a low from the past week. So Ben, how's it going? You briefly mentioned some of these things, but what's up?
Yeah, I'll start with the Teferis. In the RCQ, I didn't do too bad. I came in 13th out of 28, I think. So, fine. I missed top 8 by a bit. I ended up going 3-2. I did actually miss top 8 on breakers because of how it ended up working out. So there was a world where my opponents performed better in the tournament, and then I could have made top 8 on the tiebreakers. I think 2 3-2s or 1 3-2 got in. Played pretty well, which I was very happy with. I'm still playing classic black-white scam, which turns out now that Rakdos scam is kind of gone. Sometimes still straggling on. I've seen people playing just the Grief version, and it's still a pretty good deck. Black-white scam is it's where it's at. I really like where the deck is positioned right now, and it felt good to play it. I do think I have a rough matchup against Yawgmoth Hospital. Got to improve that somehow. And there was a critical game in round 4 where I was 2-1 and things could have gone better. I sideboarded incorrectly against 8-whack, like the Koldotha Forge, whatever, Rebirth. It's like an artifact Goblin Bushwhacker deck where they make a bunch of tokens, play a thing that gives them all 1-0 and haste, and then swing for $1 million. And I boarded out my Cauldron Complete, thinking that my Stoneforge Mystic wouldn't live long enough for me to put my Cauldron Complete into play, give it lifelink with like Shadow Spear and swing to balance out my life total. Because that deck really can't beat a swing of like 6 life. And I had a pivotal moment in the game where I was like, oh man, like I've stabilized, they're tapped out. I can do this really sick play where you put Stoneforge Mystic's ability on the stack. So you activate it, you can put an equipment from your hand into play, you flicker it with Ephemerate, you go get Cauldron Complete, and then you let the trigger resolve, putting Cauldron Complete into play. I would have been able to equip the Shadow Spear, swing for $1 million, stabilize. And when I was looking through my deck, I realized that I sideboarded out Cauldron Complete. So when I took out Sword of Fire Ice instead, my opponent was like, oh, not Cauldron Complete? I thought I was dead. So when even your opponent is happy about your misplay, that's how you know you messed up. So I think I could have performed better. I do think that was a mistake, and it may have cost me top 8. Certainly something to learn from. Now, what's funny is that between rounds of this RCQ, I was playing in the win a festival in a box thing, and I actually went 6-0. So
I had no idea you double queued those events. That's ridiculous.
Oh, dude, of course I did. In between rounds on Twitter, I was making a thread about my update for my RCQ and the update for the festival in a box, and I pulled the clean 6-0 with a pretty sweet Abzan mid-range deck. Really going back to my roots on that one. The highlight was a Galta and Mavrin Fame and a Fauna Shaman, which Fauna Shaman, you can discard a creature card to go tutor out another creature card. I had a really good suite of creatures to tutor out. I had the Skyfisher Spider, the one from Dominaria United, that can destroy a creature. So I had like a tutorable removal spell. It could also gain you a bunch of life. I had Galta and Mavrin as a huge bomb, a bunch of other cool creatures like that to tutor for. That was all a great time. Tibble, I've had some long days this week. Yesterday I was at school from about 7 a.m. to about 9:30 p.m. or 9 p.m., something like that. I just stayed clean through the whole time to my students' concert. It was like the holiday choir band concert, and I told him I would never miss it, and started to regret it around 6 p.m. But at that point, I'd committed, and it was a great show. My students were really stoked to see me there, and I'm happy I went, but I have not really caught up on the sleep since. And I got to say, this cold brew, it's doing wonders, but I feel like I'm tired really fast now, rather than just tired slow. I feel like I'm fast tired. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Anywho, what's up with you?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with my Teferi as well. I did a thing and got Magic Online installed on my Mac and have started looking into renting out both Pioneer and Modern Spirits because I was doing some updates to the deck on my Moxfield account, making some adjustments to the deck list, figuring out what I wanted to purchase to update my paper version of the deck. And I had been looking at, Modern Spirits and Pioneer Spirits, in theory, aren't very different. They run the same package of spirits, very similar kind of removal suite. And now they're running Surge of whatever it's called, Surge of Sustenance or something like that. Surge of, I can't remember. It's a
Salvation, maybe? The white?
Surge of Salvation. I think that's right. Yeah, it's white.
Yeah.
From Aftermath. And it's from the Mars the Machine app.
Sure.
Anyway, it gives like your whole board hexproof or something. So it's just like a nice board save for when your opponent board wipes. In any case, there's a lot of overlap between the Pioneer and Modern versions of the deck. And the biggest problem is really the mana base that doesn't have overlap. You're missing fetches in Pioneer and a few of other things. And so you have to make adjustments, and then the sideboards are totally different. Anyway, I was building these out, realized I need about $300 worth of cards to build both Pioneer and Modern, which when we're talking about Modern decks and Pioneer decks, not very much money.
Not too bad.
To get 2 decks out of it.
Yeah.
That said, what I realized is through Card Hoarder's rent program, not sponsored, through their rental program, it'll cost me about $3 a week to rent both decks.
That's awesome.
So just going to do that for a while and not shell out hundreds of dollars on a deck that I have not really ever played in paper because I don't go to tournaments that often. So feeling great about that. Excited to kind of jam one of my favorite decks and get some games in here and there. My Tibble is, and I may have mentioned this on the show a little while ago, but turns out I need like glasses for nearsighted stuff, like reading glasses essentially, because I picked a career that is daily damaging my eyes.
Yeah.
And so now I need glasses for near stuff. I can see just fine without them, but it strains my eyes, and eventually will need them more or less permanently. And so it's kind of more of a preventative measure to like elongate the amount of time out I can go without needing them permanently. But yeah, not a huge fan of that.
Yeah. Well, I guess like it's not really a good long-term solution as more and more jobs become screen-based, like that's going to happen to other people too.
Yeah, it will. I'm staring at a screen, and I mean, we're all doing it with our phones too. Like people are averaging probably between 6 and 10 hours of screen time across devices in some way, shape, or form on a day, like on average. So it's a lot. And we're looking, I mean, phone screens are getting bigger and stuff, but they're still small. And so text is really tiny. And I read a lot. So even on like a physical book or on a Kindle or something, I'm doing a lot of stuff nearsighted. So yeah, I guess it just is what happens. But yeah, you're probably right. It's going to be more and more common, I think.
I had a student tell me that they brought their screen time down and they were really happy about it. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. What'd you bring it down to? And they go, 14 hours.
Down to 14 hours?
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me feel good. I saw it at like 7 and change the other day, and I felt awful. And well, that's good.
Yeah, the world's not ready for the generation that's in high school and below right now. They are tech integrated. They may as well be cyborgs.
Well, that about does it for us this week. Thank you so much for listening. Do check out the Discord. Again, drop your questions in that 2023 holiday mailbag channel. Go check out the trophy channel where we have our scoreboard going and keeping notes of who's trophying and how many for each set. We also have our bounty boards where you can actually submit to win real prizes. We'll send you packs if you are achieving the bounties. And a lot of fun ones. So definitely jump in there and check that out. The link to that is in the episode description as well as on our Twitter page. If you'd like to support the show directly, maybe get your hands on one of those sweet Itzkinth stickers, check out the Patreon at patreon.com/Draft Chaff Pod. That keeps the show going, and we really appreciate everybody who supports us over there. And if you want to find us on social media, we're on Twitter at Draft Chaff Pod and on Reddit as well. We have a subreddit there, r/Draft Chaff Pod. Thanks, folks, and we'll catch you next week.
I wanted to say this again. If you're thinking about jumping into the Discord and excitedly typing up something about any of our discourse earlier, be mindful. It's important, especially in today's climate. A lot of my students I see are really affected by this, and I know everyone is ultimately. Something else I wanted to shout out was that we've got a new format this week, which is timeless. And man, what a format. I've only played a couple of games, but it kind of feels like Arena Legacy. Maybe not vintage. There's no lotuses or anything. You can't do anything super busted turn one combo wins, but it does feel a lot like Legacy, where you're playing these hyper cheap, hyper efficient spells and playing with a lot of stuff that's, banned in some way. You can play with Luris. You can play with Oko. You can play with Uro. I don't know, Yorion decks I've seen cropping up. One ring decks that are looking to cast natural order to go get a Troxa, to go find more one rings, like really, really messed up stuff. So if you want a taste of some broken magic, I think Timeless, I don't love all the alchemy stuff. Historic and alchemy have kind of fallen by the wayside. I haven't touched them in a while. But Timeless, I think this one might be it. We might be back with this one.
There are alchemy cards in Timeless, but sure.
I don't know. Here's the thing. As wacky as some of those alchemy cards are, they're not as good as Orcish Bowmasters, or they're not as good as Oko, or they're not as good as, there's Bolt and Channel in this, right? So I actually think what I was hoping happened with alchemy and didn't happen might happen here, which is where the paper cards are so good that they edge out the alchemy versions and alchemy nonsense adjusted cards to the point where they're basically unplayable in the format. That's what I'm hoping, at least.
Yeah, well, it goes a long way that they aren't putting in alchemy adjusted versions of paper cards. So if they were printed in paper, you're just getting the paper version, which I think, it goes a long way to making that happen.